Welcome to my channel, Delightful Stories. I'll be happy if you subscribe to my channel and like it. Enjoy watching and don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments about the story. Jack saw her in the hallway of the center by chance. He rarely showed up in Building 2 at this time, usually working in his office with documents. But today, he had to go out to make coffee. The coffee machine on the floor was out of order, and the nearest one was right here in Building 2. Of course, I could have sent the secretary to get the drink, but she was busy enough as it was with all of them. The center's expanding. There are more and more patients, new sponsors and partners. Besides, he just wanted to stretch his legs. His neck was getting stiff from his sedentary work. He did not like the administrative red tape. Piles of documents bored him. Much more the man liked to interact with the young patients of the center. Some of them showed potential at once. Some of them showed potential at once. Some had to be pulled out of the sink long and hard. But in the end, all of them had the result. Each child with an autism spectrum disorder just needed a different approach, and Jack knew how to find it. True, now he was no longer an ordinary doctor, but the head of a nationally renowned medical center. Children with autism are helped here. Patients from all over the country come here for counseling and treatment, and specialists take on even the most severe cases. The center's success is no coincidence. It is the result of systematic work. Jack carefully and for a long time built the team he leads today. This team is made up of enthusiasts who certainly do not work just for the sake of appearances. Individual approach, attention to detail, these are the unbreakable principles of their center. Jack started out as an ordinary employee at the regional hospital. He was taken there straight from the students' benches, right after graduating from the medical academy. At the time, the guy was literally burning for his work, ready to live on the job. He was surrounded by many of the same enthusiastic colleagues, with whom it was so interesting and useful to communicate. Jack felt in his element. Gradually, he realized that his theme was working with sick children. He had seen a lot of them during his internship and was sure that in each case something could be done to improve the situation for the child. He wanted to unravel what kind of peace lay behind the outward detachment of these patients. It was a mystery that beckoned him to seek answers. He had opened his first clinic 15 years earlier. By that time, he had gained important experience, found like-minded people, and, most importantly, acquired the money necessary to develop the business. Of course, it was difficult to call their office in the office building a clinic. They consulted patients, selected therapies for children, and made plans for rehabilitation. But soon they had to expand. The small firm began to gain popularity. The flow of clients increased, and Jack and his team were no longer able to cope with the small staff. It was a long and difficult road. There were some mistakes and difficulties, but everything was surmountable. And now the man was at the head of one of the largest medical centers in the country. He worked on the pricing policy for a long time, obtained budget subsidies, found sponsors, and now treatment at his center was affordable to every family, and even free programs were available to the very poor. So hello. The staff greeted the chief with a smile. The chief always behaved evenly and politely, followed a carrot and stick policy, and he considered, not without reason, such an approach to be the most effective. Not only patients from all over the country were striving to come to the center, but also the best specialists were trying to get a job here. They employed really experienced and talented people, hence the amazing results. Here comes the coffee machine. Finally, you can enjoy the taste of a competent drink. Jack just needs to perk up. He was up late last night reviewing scans of the latest research on autism, and now he's feeling sleepy, and the day is still young, with plenty of work to do, and that's definitely a joy. Jack saw her on the way back. From surprise and surprise, the man almost dropped the cardboard cup from his hand. "Boss, is this really it? Her? Or just a woman who looked a lot like her?" The man walked on, stopped behind the empty receptionist's desk, as if interested in the paperwork, while he stared from under lowered lashes at the couch next to the masseur's office. Yes, that was really her. The girl who had once occupied all his thoughts. Now Jack often thought of her, tried to imagine how she lived, what she worked, what she did, what she looked like. His heart was pounding frantically in his chest. His palms were sweating. His head was hot and his back was cold, as if he were a 10th grader again, not the head of a prestigious medical school. The institution he created from scratch. Are his feelings for Anne still there, and is Michael, an old school friend? Right, and Jack still doesn't have a second half just because he compares everyone to her, except no one makes him feel the same way she does. But what is she doing here? The only reason adults show up at his center is because of a child's serious illness. It turns out that the same misfortune has overtaken her, and she is in great need of help. Jack takes a closer look at her. Slim, beautiful, stylish as ever. Grew up, of course, but it was good for her. And in the bottomless blue eyes that had once so enchanted young Jack, she could clearly read sadness and anxiety. Anne looked tired. A kind of deadpan. Jack had seen many mothers of children with disabilities in his lifetime. They fell into two categories: those who still hoped for a miracle, and those who had almost given up. She was clearly in the latter category. Clearly she had a long way to go and fought hard. The result probably wasn't particularly encouraging. We'd have to find out more about her baby. If there was anything Jack could do to help her, he would do it. Do anything to see that radiant smile on her face again, the one that had given him so much happiness in his school days. But what to do now? Go up to her, talk to her. Why is it so hard to decide? And there's nothing to hope for. Surely Anne is married. So many guys at school were running after her, walking in herds. Of course, there's a man by her side right now. They're raising a child together, overcoming adversity. It's a bonding experience. Jack noticed a long time ago that if the father does not run away from the family, learned about the diagnosis of the child, it almost always becomes a support and backing for his wife, a solid shoulder, a stone wall. Unfortunately, there are many men who are afraid of responsibility, and even blame the second half in the birth of a sick baby. But she must have chosen a real man out of all her many admirers, a strong, reliable, faithful one. And he, of course, will help his former classmate in any way he can. Every patient at the center was treated with care and attention, but this child was a special case for him personally. His mother may not even remember the quiet, modest classmate. She had no idea how he felt, and he thought about her every day. All these years, the man remembered episodes from his school life, their rare conversations, her words to him. And of course that day, especially that day, Anne got to smile again. Those cheerful sparks in her eyes and dimples on her cheeks suit her so well. Jack strode swiftly and determinedly into the masseur's office. For a moment he was right beside her, but she paid no attention to the man in the white coat, of which there were many. The woman seemed to be studying a stent on the wall with advice on rehabilitating children with mental disorders. On the couch lay a skinny, tall boy. Long arms, long legs, an awkward teenager, no longer a toddler. It was harder to work with him, but anything was possible. Blue eyes, blonde hair. The child looked remarkably like his mother. He was a handsome boy. If he wasn't sick, there'd be plenty of girls around by now. He'd be playing soccer or programming. What else are the youth of today interested in? The doctor immediately noticed the boy's absent look. The boy is heavy. It was immediately clear as he asked the masseur, who was kneading the young patient's collar zone. The outlook is unclear, he replied. The kid is almost 13. He doesn't speak much, and he doesn't react well to the world around him. "Will work," said Jack. He took the boy's chart from the table and scrutinized it. Brian, 12 years old. He has been to every treatment in the city the doctor is from, but he is almost inconclusive. Nothing here will help the boy, and the mother is no longer hopeful for improvement. Many mothers bring their children here just to convince themselves that they have done all they can, and they leave inspired and elated. Of course, Brian got to them late. It's easier and quicker with the little ones, but they struggle for the teens too. We'll have to talk to the attending. Check on the prescription. Get his opinion. He walked past the woman again, who again didn't even look at him. That's fine. So far he was not ready to meet and talk, and she herself would probably be embarrassed. She was so successful, so promising, and then she has a disabled child. Many parents of such children blame themselves. They are ashamed of something. They need help from psychologists. No, the doctor didn't want to embarrass her now. There were so many people around. We couldn't even talk properly. He would find a way to talk later. He certainly would now. My father lost all humanity and confused day and night. He and his mother took turns being on duty at night, making sure he didn't burn down the apartment while he was unconscious. One day, it almost happened. My father, who had been drinking, decided to smoke while sitting on the sofa and fell asleep with a lit cigarette. Good thing the sensitively sleeping son caught the smell of burning and managed to knock down the flames which had already occupied the upholstery of the old failing couch. And then came 10th grade at their school. After 9th grade, students were tested and divided into specialized classes. There were several areas: humanities, economics, engineering, and chemistry. For those who were undecided, regular classes functioned. Jack had known for a long time where he wanted to go, to the chemistry and biology class. And of course he had no trouble passing the test. So did Michael. They had both already decided to tie their lives to medicine. Only for Michael, everything was predetermined. But for Jack at that time, the prospects were still rather vague. He was well aware that his parents would not be able to pay tuition. It would be enough to live on. It remained only on their own forces. On the eve of the 10th grade, Jack decided not to think about anything except his studies. After all, by all means, he had to get on a budget. But in September, he saw her for the first time and realized that he couldn't keep his vow. In the 10th grade, many of the school's students had left for colleges, but there were newcomers too. Many were attracted by the specialized classes, so children from various parts of the city joined the ranks of students in Lyceum 15. Among them was Anne. Unlike his amorous friend, Jack was not particularly interested in girls. No, of course he secretly admired, especially pretty classmates, but he did not feel any serious feelings for them, and even considered himself a little strange because of it. But here at the lineup, he just could not take his eyes off his new classmate. Her tanned face, bright blue eyes, and the wind played in her long blonde hair. A simple dark dress favorably emphasized a slender figure. Her makeup wasn't flashy. Her short skirt wasn't provocative, and her uncomplicated hair with dyed strands made her look as simple and natural as possible. But at the same time, she outshone all the other girls in beauty. There was grace in her every movement. He wasn't the only one looking at the new girl. He could see how boys looked at her, including the acknowledged leaders of the school. Even the girls who looked at her were evaluating her, and in the eyes of some of them could be read admiration, and in others, outright envy. She noticed this attention to her person, but it did not embarrass her in the least. She was relaxed and confident. It was obvious that she was comfortable in her new environment, even at the line. Standing on the spot, Jack realized that he'd fallen in love for the first time in his life. His body was reacting too strangely. His face was burning. His heart was pounding, like a frantic palm on his body. A pathetic sight, I guess. It was a good thing no one usually paid attention to him. And then a little later, Anne spoke to him. just asked him where the canteen was. An ordinary question. But Jack blushed to the roots of his hair and couldn't answer. His vocal cords felt as if they were stiffened by ice. As the guy cheered, he couldn't utter a sound. Anne smiled in surprise and a little sympathy. It was an awkward moment. It was a good thing Michael was around. He, though embarrassed, still managed to explain the way to the new classmate. "What are you doing?" she asked Jack afterward. Like a statue, he stood still and blushed all over. "That I must be a fool of her. I must be a fool, Adenaya," Jack replied confusedly. "No, that's not the point," Ian replied. "Looks like you finally fell in love. Too bad, only there's no chance. She's already being groomed by someone else. And that's just the beginning." He didn't have the charisma and muscular corset of the best athletes in school, and he really wasn't going to get anywhere. But he would get to see her for 2 whole years, hear her voice, and maybe even talk to her sometime. That's true happiness. Jack hadn't realized before how much of an effect the mere presence of one person can have on another. From the outside, of course, he seemed like an outsider. He was silent, withdrawn, a nerd in old, unfashioned clothes, always sleepless and exhausted. Quite a sight. They laughed at him but did not touch him, like in middle school. And then one day, in the 11th grade, there was an incident that the boy remembered for the rest of his life. Countless times he replayed that scene in his head and pondered how, should have responded, how to act. The first bell rang on the eve of an important test. Michael was sick at the time, so the seat next to him was empty. He never made any other friends, and suddenly, right at the big break, she came up to him, Anne, the acknowledged beauty of the school, followed by throngs of admirers. "May I?" With a smile, she asked. The boy only nodded. His voice went somewhere else. "I have to do the test well, or else I'll get a low score for the quarter, and my parents will make a scandal again. Can you help me?" "Yeah, sure." At last the boy regained his voice. "That's great," smiled the girl. She was, after all, very different from all the other girls. So simple, so natural, so kind. Never pretended to be something or acted like a capricious princess. He really wanted to get to know her. She must be a very interesting person. He could feel it. "What subjects don't you understand?" asked the boy. He felt uncomfortable sitting next to her. Nathan did not know where to put his hands. "It's easier to say what I understand," she grinned. "You can count them on the fingers of one hand. I can't imagine being as good a student as you are at summarizing all these formulas. It's like reading Chinese literature. On the contrary, everything is logical, interconnected. One thing follows from another. For me, I'm just learning how to relate to people." "I can see that." She gave Jack a broad smile that made her cheeks appear very charmingly dimpled. Jack blurted back. Now that she was beside him and talking to him so easily, he felt truly happy. "You're not very sociable, but you're kind, good. Not like—" A girl who walked into the classroom on the arm of her friend stopped her from finishing. "We've been looking for you all over school. We said we'd meet in the cafeteria. What are you doing?" "I was." "Yeah, we can see what you're doing." And the girl giggled. Suddenly he realized that everyone in the class was watching their conversation. The boys and girls were watching the scene with interest. "What? Are you guys talking about a date?" one of the classmates playfully asked. Someone laughed at the completely unfortunate joke. Jack should have said something, to stop, to cheer the girls up, but communication was never his strong suit. What was there to say? The girl was silent too. Her face was all confused and even frightened. She was clearly uncomfortable with these dating jokes. Quiet, pretended gossip girl reassured her friend. "Maybe they're having an affair, and you're going to ruin it with your comments." Many people laughed outright. The guy flushed to the roots of his hair. He looked at the girl. She was sitting there tense and unhappy. You are idiots. Finally, she answered the girls. Stop talking about me and that monster like that. I am disgusted. Anne got up from the desk and went back to her seat. It was a good thing that the bell rang right after that. The teacher entered the classroom and the test began. The assignments were easy, even elementary. The boy did it in 10 minutes. He sat over his work and thought about what had just happened. He was ashamed and hurt because a beautiful girl called him a monster in front of everyone and ran away from his desk. And she had such an expression on her face, almost squeamish, just so no one would think she liked him. She even turned down a good grade so as not to tarnish her reputation by associating with him. Was he so unpleasant and pathetic to her? And even worse, is the girl she likes the same as everyone else? No, she is not, Jack sensed. She is different, just confused now, scared. For teenagers, the opinion of their peers is extremely important, which is why they sometimes change their behavior. For the first time in his life, his position in the school hierarchy strained him. Before, he hadn't paid attention to such little things, as long as they didn't bother him. Now he realized that sometimes it was important to be like everyone else, to be accepted. He never went to school discos. He never went to the movies or clubs together. He was not accepted in the company. He was more attracted to science, to those very formulas and definitions that most people couldn't understand. He was considered an oddball, a strange but harmless guy. And now, it had all played against him. It hurt. It was unfair. Anne, the most wonderful girl on earth, didn't want to stay in the company of the school loser. Since then, she would not go near him even to copy his homework. And most unpleasant of all, she laughed out loud at the flat jokes of her classmates. Andrew, the best player on the school basketball team, was especially hard on the boy, pumped up, stylish, but completely ignorant of academics. At first, he genuinely didn't understand how a man who still struggled to read could go to high school. Why didn't he go to high school? Why didn't he go to college? Then it turned out that he would enter the university through an athletic program and play for the university team, so he needed to finish 11th grade. Andrew was clearly attracted to the girl. He was showing her unmistakable signs of attention for the second year, paying her compliments, inviting her to the movies, constantly hanging out with her, even hugging her around the waist in front of everyone. The girl seemed to like it. She smiled and talked to Andrew a lot. But officially they were not considered a couple, and in general she never made a choice. She remained sweet and friendly with everyone, but that was as far as it went. Then one day at recess, Andrew graced the guy with the words "hi" and held out his hand. He thought that was something new. A star of that magnitude shaking his hand. "I have a case for you," Andrew continued. "Did you do your chemistry homework?" That's it. Everything fell into place. For a quarter they had to prepare a chemistry paper, choose and describe a problem, conduct an experiment, design everything according to a sample. Of course, he wrote the paper and was very proud of the result. His work claimed the status of a scientific investigation. Surely he would win first place in school and go to a competition at the university, but now, apparently, he would be asked to do the impossible. And so it went. "Look, you're a normal kid. You're also the best student in the class. Give me your paper. I'll just put my name on the title page and hand it in as if it were my own. I need an A in chemistry. Otherwise they'll transfer me from the major to the regular class. It's my last chance." Jack only shook his head in the negative. He'd been working on this paper for a whole quarter. He poured his heart into it and hoped that winning the contest would help him get in. It seemed that prize winners were promised extra points for admission to medical school, so the boy answered with a categorical refusal. "That's too much." So that's how you are." With anger in his eyes, the athlete grumbled, and then suddenly pushed him hard in the shoulder and added, "Well, I'll talk to you again." He didn't turn in his work, got another well-deserved ed. He was transferred to regular, non-professional classes. Jack knew that the boy was angry with him now, and he wouldn't let it go. At the inevitable encounters in the school corridor, Jack never missed a chance to say something hurtful to him, to trip him up, even to spit at him, and also to threaten him. He knew he was in danger, and he had to be careful before the athlete cooled down. He'd jump out after school before anyone else, while he and his buddies would guard him outside the school gates, constantly changing routes. It was pretty humiliating. But what to do? Well, at least he didn't have much time left before graduation. And then one day something really unbelievable happened. Anne, who all this time diligently avoided a quiet, battered classmate, suddenly approached him herself at recess. "We need to talk." Embarrassed, she said, "Let's meet at 6 o'clock in the park. I just finished my tutoring session." "I'll meet you at the park at 6. 0 p.m. Jack was the only thing he could get out of his mouth. His breath caught and blood rushed to his face. The closeness of the girl was really affecting him. He couldn't think about anything but her until tonight. She had summoned him, invited him to the meeting herself. Why? The girl obviously had no sympathy for him. She just couldn't feel sympathy for him. There are so many handsome, athletic high school students around. The same Andrew, they are witty, able to communicate, funny. What's he like? He's a battered, quiet guy who now also sneaks out after school like a hare to avoid being seen by the athlete and his buddies. And yet she wants to say something to him, just to not act like a fool at this meeting, not to lose her power of speech and ability to think again. The long-awaited evening came. The girl looked simply marvelous. Fascinating sundress emphasized the slender figure, shiny blonde hair softly falling in waves to her shoulders. But her eyes were strange, anxious, sad, and guarded. "Hey!" The boy smiled at her, no matter what she said to him now. The main thing is that next to him the most beautiful girl on earth, whose presence has such a strange effect on him. On the one hand, it fills him with energy and makes him happy. On the other, turns almost into a fool who cannot pick up the right words and behave naturally and relaxed. I wanted to apologize to you." She squeezed it out, her eyes downcast. The shadows from her long eyelashes fell on her cheeks. The classmates slowly wandered down one of the side paths of the park, leading to its quiet, abandoned park. Why? Sincerely didn't understand the boy. "Remember what I called you in front of everyone? I ran away, just scared, you know. The girls were gossipy. They would spread rumors that I didn't want that. Is that what this is about?" Turns out the girl's been worrying about what she did all along. She has no idea that it's not that he forgave her. He wasn't even offended. The guy smiled and was about to tell her that, when suddenly Andrew came silently from behind the old summer scene. He was not alone, but with his cronies and loyal associates. And a little away there were boys and girls from high school crowded together. Apparently spectators. Jack looked regretfully at the girl. She didn't know where to hide from his gaze and stood with her eyes downcast. Turns out it had been set up and lured him here. She was the one. Tears came to the boy's eyes. There was no fear. He was hurt that a second ago they had been talking so frankly and seemingly sincerely. And now, "Good for you," threw Andrew without even looking at her. The guy was smiling wickedly. His gaze was fixed on the boy. "So, are you going to answer for your greed or what?" Ignoring them, the boy asked. "That wasn't very nice. What you did, leaving a comrade in trouble. And now I'm out of the major class. You can't imagine how much trouble I am in at home because of this." What kind of comrade are you to me? He muttered under his breath, and then he got a good solid kick in the shoulder. It was inevitable. The boy woke up, struggling to stay on his feet, but not for long. The next blow knocked him to the ground. Andrew didn't hit hard, just kicked his legs, his back. He didn't fight back so as not to spray the athlete. He only covered his head with his hands. He was joined by several others. The blows were falling from all sides. Jack was kicked. Stones were thrown at him. There were insults. Dirty, low, undeserved. The blows were not severe. Rather, it was all done simply to humiliate him. What hurt more was the realization that the girl was in league with them. Now she saw him on the ground, dirty, humiliated, not resisting. Even more pathetic and worthless than usual. When it was over and the seniors had dispersed, he was still lying on the ground for a long time, looking up into the blue, almost summer sky. This part of the park was usually deserted. That was why it had been chosen. Now no one was stopping him from enjoying the peace and quiet. He wasn't going back to school. That was for sure. How would he look his classmates in the eye after what had happened? And how would he behave with them, with her? No, he would take the internal exams as an extern, as he had been offered to do for a long time. He had long outgrown the school curriculum. Then exams admission. Of course, he would have to face his abusers and his betrayer. Somehow he would get over it. Now Jack didn't go to school, prepared for exams at home, and went to courses at the medical academy. A friend regularly, though no one asked him to, reported school news to him. Andrew and Anne began officially dating. The boy understood that this was the way things were going, but still he was hurt and offended. Her chosen one was a frankly stupid, rude man, capable of low deeds. The girl deserved more. She would not be happy with him. The guy didn't hold a grudge against the girl who took advantage of the weakness of the guy in love with her to set him up. She was clearly being pressured. She was being forced. The girl had no choice. She's probably going through a lot herself right now. The guy, even beaten, couldn't stop thinking about her. He didn't regret leaving school. The only thing he really missed was seeing his beloved, hearing her voice. Then there were exams, which he expectedly passed with top marks and graduation. But the boy did not go to the party. First, he had no money. Secondly, he simply did not want to pretend that he was having fun with his classmates. But this era of life called, she too should be forgotten. She's dating Andrew. What's the point of dreaming of the unattainable? Jack plunged headlong into his studies. At the medical academy, he felt like he belonged. He was respected here, his opinions were listened to, and even the seniors sought his advice. When the boy was in his 4th year, his mother passed away. The heart of a woman could not bear the burden of her husband, who did not let her live or work in peace. And the death of her eldest son markedly undermined her health. It was hard for her son then. He tried to please his mother with successes, took on most of the household chores to relieve her, wanted to become a wealthy man. Then he would buy his mother a separate apartment, so she would not suffer with her alcoholic husband, but live for her own pleasure. He would have taken her to the sea, where she had been only once in her life, almost as a child. It all seemed very close. Graduation was just around the corner. Job offers were already coming in for the talented, promising student. And then all of a sudden, this massive heart attack. His mother kept his father somehow, did not let her husband drink, watched his appearance. Without her, he quickly turned into an animal. To be at home became impossible. The apartment now looked like nothing at all. Jack had to prepare for exams, write term papers. But how could he do this when there was a party going on in the next room, and cigarette smoke was pervasive? In the end, the boy couldn't take it anymore. He found several part-time jobs: nurse, lab technician, and even night watchman. All he earned was enough to rent a room in a dormitory. Not a mansion, of course, but still better than what his own apartment had become. The boy concentrated on his studies. Studying and working was hard, but he managed. Michael, who was now a classmate, was a great support to him in this difficult time. Feeling a friend's shoulder in such a difficult situation was worth it. They graduated from the academy and got a job at the research center at the regional hospital. They liked their jobs and, most importantly, they were doing just fine. While still a student, the boy became interested in the topic of autism. The disease seemed to him an interesting mystery. A mystery he could solve if he tried. The guy was trying, searching for new information, putting into practice the latest developments of scientists, putting forward his own ideas and hypotheses. The little patients he took care of as a young doctor showed amazing results. Parents were ready to take their little ones to him from all over the city. A few more years passed and the inevitable happened. His father died. Now the boy was all alone in the world. There was no one else in his family. Relations with his father had always been cold and strained. But still the loneliness weighed heavily on Jack. Jack realized he needed a new job to take his mind off the gloomy thoughts that were keeping him from enjoying life. And the way out was found. The young doctor had long dreamed of opening his own center for children with mental disabilities, where he could deploy at his full potential rather than keeping himself in the restrictive framework of existing programs. He had the money to get started. His parents' empty apartment could now be sold. He had no intention of living in it anyway. Too many sad memories were associated with the place. So the friends opened their own clinic. At first it was just a consulting room. Young, talented doctors had their first clients. Many of them moved here from state clinic after their favorite doctors. And so it went. He felt in his right place. He liked his work. The results pleased and inspired him to new feats. The private clinic soon moved from an office to a spacious office. Then I had to rent a whole room as the flow of patients increased. That is how the large Center for Autistic Children gradually emerged, with people from all over the country trying to get in. The man worked hard. This was his life, his child, his family. As for the personal front, of course, around the successful, talented doctor hovered a lot of groupies. Now the doctor was really rich. He lived in a large apartment in the city center, drove an expensive foreign car, traveled several times a year. There was no trace of the battered, insecure boy who could not fight back against bullies. He even took up Thai boxing and made some progress in this field. He had a couple of medals from amateur competitions. The man periodically entered into a relationship, only it did not end in anything serious. To his own surprise, the man could not forget his classmate, remembering her every day despite her busy schedule. He tried to imagine how her fate had turned out, what she looked like now. When friends were still living in their hometown, rumors of former classmates reached them. Anne did not get into the academy as her parents had planned. She had to go to the Department of Food Processing. Wherever she had enough points, no one else knew anything about her. And now he had moved to the capital and lost touch with people from the past, with all but his loyal friend and colleague, of course. He was doing just fine on the personal front. He was married to a beautiful woman. There were 3 girls in the family. Michael, too, was always trying to get him to marry and be happy as a family. The man, of course, was attracted to beautiful girls. A few romantic dates were always welcome. But to tie his life to any of these ladies, it was not even a thought. And now this chance encounter with her, the one who flashed in his mind every day. What an incredible coincidence. She had a child with an autism spectrum disorder. It's hard, it's a parent's pain. And he can help her, will do whatever he can to see a smile on her face. The doctor decided that he would talk to her when the first results of the treatment showed themselves, and he was at once relieved and at ease. Yes, that would be best. She was sitting in front of the massage therapist's office. The specialist was now working with her son. The woman did not believe the treatment at the center would change anything, but still they advised her to try, and she made up her mind. Moreover, the Fund for Assistance to Sick Children collected money for a course of therapy. This therapy was not expensive at all, so she got through it quickly. She got married almost immediately after high school. She was a food production student at the time. What could you do? She didn't live up to her parents' expectations. They had dreamed of seeing her as a doctor, but she didn't have the ability. The woman still remembered her mother's sorrowful, disappointed face and her father's furious expression when she announced the results of her exams. Her daughter was her parents' only hope. Her older sister didn't give a damn about her parents' desires and ambitions for her and behaved as she wished. From the age of 14, she dated boys, went out with bad company, according to her father and mother, skipped school, was rude in response to attempts to call her to order. Bold, defiant, beautiful. The girl both admired her older sister and was angry at her for causing her parents so much trouble. She felt sorry for her mother and father, who unsuccessfully tried to make a human being out of their eldest daughter. So she tried to please them in everything and obeyed the adults at the first word, even a glance. The older sister finished 9 grades and easily got into art school. She chose her profession to definitely have a doctor, and this mission is just for her. So after 9th grade, the girl was transferred to a new school where there was a major class with advanced study of chemistry and biology, and tried to live up to her parents' expectations. She had to be a successful, beautiful, straight, a student. However, the latter did not work out. The girl in the 10th grade realized that medicine is clearly not her. But how could she go against the will of her parents, who were so were you hoping for her? She was a beautiful girl, and she knew it. She had instant admirers at her new school, but she was in no hurry to make a choice. She didn't want a serious relationship, and it was so nice to get compliments and see boys fighting over you. She was smart and beautiful, just like her parents had dreamed. One of her new classmates was quiet, shy, and made her feel special. She wanted to get to know this smart kid better. It seemed that he was a very interesting conversationalist and could be a wonderful friend. But he blushed every time she approached him. The boy clearly had a crush on her. It could be felt. She could see that it was affecting his condition. It was a thing that was pleasing to the girl's ego. The guy was considered a weirdo with whom no one would communicate. Gradually, she began to feel the same way about him. Her interest in his person faded. He was not mysterious and enigmatic, but simply retarded. One day, however, she sat down at his desk herself. She had to write a test by all means. He was the only one in the class who could help her, Jack, and he would do it with the greatest pleasure. The girl had no doubt about it, but so badly timed came the girls with an inappropriate joke. She can't be a weirdo. She's smart, beautiful, and the most popular girl in her class. That's the kind of daughter her parents dream of. So she moved into her seat and called the innocent boy names. His eyes reflected pain and incomprehension. She was a little ashamed of her action at the time, but a little later she did something far worse. One day, the boy had refused to give his job to an athlete, the acknowledged leader of the class, who had long sought her affection. The girl then mentally even praised the shy kid. He did everything right, but the national team player got a bad grade, dropped out of the major class, and, of course, he put the weakest one in charge and blamed him for his failure. He and his buddies had been trying to catch the Otlichnik out of school for weeks, but somehow he always managed to slip away. Probably he felt that he was being hunted and was very careful, and then he was offered to be taken as a bait. That was her. The whole class noticed long ago that the weirdo was head over heels in love with her. Andrew asked for help too. How handsome and attractive he seemed at the time. How could she refuse him? and the girl became a part of a dastardly plan. She took the botanist, as agreed, to an abandoned part of the park. That's where Andrew and his buddies beat him up, but not even in the full sense of the word. The guys didn't work hard, so they rolled him on the ground, humiliated him. She remembered the scene in great detail, and then clutched her eyes and ears with her palms, but she could still hear the mocking laughter of her tormentors and the sound of blows. The girl did not wait for it to be over. She turned around and ran away, wherever she could see. Andrew caught up with her in the middle of the park, turned her around to face him, and hugged her tightly. There was a twinkle in his eye. "Well, where did you run off to?" The guy smiled, glancing at her hair. "Good girl, you're mine. Thanks for your help." Anne smiled back. Andrew had been working some kind of magic on her lately. For his sake, she was willing to do anything, even that awful thing. Jack never came to school again. They only met at their examinations. She understood that she had to apologize to the boy, but she was afraid of that and tried to keep away from the classmate she had so meanly betrayed. It wasn't hard. He himself shunned her, but there was Andrew beside her, cheerful, boisterous, confident. He had his arm around her waist. They were officially a couple now. Anne spent her life trying to forget this sordid story. She scolded herself many times for agreeing to be a part of it. She remembered the boy's sad eyes, and she blamed herself for her cowardice. And then things didn't go according to script. First of all, Anne passed her exams very average. And of course, she couldn't even dream of getting into the medical school with such scores. I had to go to a faculty with low competition. My parents hardly survived this first disappointment, but then another blow followed from Mom and Dad. In her third year, her daughter announced she was pregnant. That's how she dated Andrew. It was his baby. Mom was drinking valerian. Dad was cursing. Daughter was crying. Once again, she let her parents down. Then things got better. Andrew, learning that he would soon be a father, proposed to her. The girl exhaled. Now everything would be all right. Her parents would not have to be ashamed in front of the neighbors. He would marry her. She did not think he would dare take such a step. Things had been cooler between them lately. The boy often looked at other girls. And here's the joy. The young couple had a small wedding and moved into Andrew's grandmother's empty apartment. Family life began. Nothing good came of it. Cooking, cleaning. Anne now had to take care of her husband, iron his shirts, cook for him while he worked all day long. The athlete couldn't keep up at the institute. He was expelled after his first year despite his athletic prowess, and now he was working in a factory and did not want to continue his studies. He had long ago ceased to be the young man in love, ready to carry his wife in his arms, constant nagging reproaches and indifference. He could disappear for a couple of days with friends at someone's dacha, not even alerting his wife, and her just reproaches answered with insults. She often cried into her pillow at night, hugging her huge belly. The baby was already kicking at full speed, as if trying to support his mother. The woman held on only for the sake of this tiny native creature. In due time, a healthy boy was born, whom his father named Brian after his grandfather. She didn't mind. She liked the name, too. He was a wonderful baby boy until he was a year old. Every day the baby delighted his mother with new successes. But by the time he was a year and a half old, it was obvious something was wrong with the child. He avoided making eye contact, did not even try to conquer slides and other obstacles, was not interested in the world around him. These peculiarities became noticeable at the playground when Anne watched her son surrounded by other children. Showing him to a neurologist was advised by one of the former moms. Isisi raised 4 of them. All are different in character, so I can tell right away. There's something wrong with yours. The young mother herself already suspected something was wrong. In the evening, she shared her worries with her husband and asked for money for an examination. The husband's reaction surprised the woman. He's a normal boy. He's just calm, balanced. And if he isn't interested in other kids, it's because he is a leader. There is no need for him to run after somebody. Let them follow him. But after about a year, even he had to admit that there was something wrong with his son. The boy still did not talk. He just repeated the same syllables, throwing tantrums on the spot. He was still not interested in toys and other children. "Take him for a checkup," the husband said, handing his wife the money. "Maybe you had abnormals in your family and passed bad genes from you to my son. We're definitely perfect on that line." Thus began an era of pandemonium in hospitals and medical centers. The doctors recognized that there was clearly something wrong with the child. He did not fit into any age norms, was far behind his peers in development, tried to avoid contact with others, as if he was in some kind of cocoon where no one else, not even his own mother, had access. One of the professors, after reviewing Brian's test results and carefully examining him, finally made the disappointing diagnosis of autism. And there is no cure. It's only correctable. It's for life. She didn't even want to remember. In her condition at the time, accepting the diagnosis was not easy. It took years of work on herself. Her husband never accepted the fact that his son was mentally disabled. Her husband blamed her for everything. She was the one who misbehaved during the pregnancy and right after the baby was born. "Normal mothers have normal children," he scolded, yelled, stopped going near the child, although he used to try to play with her son and often took him for walks. And then he demanded that they divorce. "The alimony will pay. Where to go? But I don't want to see you. Get out of my apartment." She withstood even that, packed her things, and went to her parents. Where else was she supposed to go? Of course they scolded her every day. Constantly lectured lectures, but still father and mother did not abandon her daughter, gave a roof over her head, a piece of bread, and helped with the baby. She would not have made it on her own. At first the woman hoped for a miracle. But what if the doctors were wrong? What if it was not autism, but some kind of milder disorder that could be corrected? The mother dragged her son to rehab centers and did a lot of work with him at home. She had a goal: to get the child back to normal by school, so that he and his peers would go to the line, funny and toothless, with a beautiful bright backpack on his back and a huge bouquet in his hand. The woman had to quit her job. Finishing her studies at the institute as she had planned before was out of the question. All the strength all the time, all the strength all the time, all the resources now went to the baby just so he would be normal, like other boys. But by the time the boy was 5 years old, it was obvious that this simple dream was not destined to come true. He never spoke and continued to remain in his world, where no one else had access, and it was impossible to lure him out. At the age of 7, he was not even allowed into a remedial school, let alone a regular school. Teachers would come to their home, sit for the scheduled academic hour with a boy who didn't even know how to pick up a pen, and then leave. When he turned 10, the woman gave up. She tried everything: massages, therapy, swimming. She sacrificed her job in order to give time to her son. She broke from small part-time jobs. The floors in the office. The floors in the office. Then someone's baby a couple of hours to sit. She needed money for therapy, but as the years passed, she had no results. By Brian's first solid anniversary, there was no hope left. The parents helped pull the boy through both physically and financially. Thank them so much for that. But how many reproaches he listened to, ranging from the fact that she gave her son the wrong medicine, to accusations that she was terribly stupid in the use of her life. Now her idol and ideal was, oddly enough, her eldest daughter. She and her husband opened a design studio in the capital, and things got going. Now they were successful and wealthy people. Their family had two healthy children, a boy and a girl, of course. She was happy for her sister, looking at her family pictures that looked like pictures from a beautiful advertisement. But the daily parental comparisons, not in her favor, of course, were very upsetting. The woman still couldn't get used to the fact that they had switched roles. Her father had been paid child support, but he never came to see his son. The alimony was so tiny that there was nothing to talk about. The ex-husband remarried and had a perfectly healthy daughter. "You see," he said proudly when they happened to cross paths in the park, the same park where the scene with her classmate had once unfolded that still tormented the woman's conscience. "Here, look at my little girl." The little girl was indeed adorable. A pretty brunette with two ponytails in a pink dress. The woman smiled at the little girl, who hid embarrassedly behind her father's back. "She's healthy, perfectly healthy," he explained, "and very smart for her years. So is the son so into you or into your family?" "Not into me." The woman turned silently and walked in the opposite direction. There was no point in proving anything to her ex-husband, in explaining the complex science of genetics and the possibility of many different factors influencing a fetus. He had decided for himself that she was to blame for Brian's illness. It must be easier for him to live that way. One day she got a call from a center for children with disabilities and offered to treat her son at a well-known clinic in the capital. The woman, of course, had heard about this institution. They helped children with her son's diagnosis. New methods and innovative approaches, but she did not believe in success. She tried so many things. Her son will be 13 soon, but he is still not talking. Before, he sometimes stepped out of his world and reacted to the reality around him. Those moments gave her hope, but not anymore. But I couldn't give up. All the more reason to have money. The foundation raised the money they needed for treatment. That's how they ended up in this beautiful, stylish medical center. There was even an on-site dormitory for non-native residents. She and her son were accommodated in a room that looked like a room in an expensive hotel and were fed in the dining room. It was nice, almost a resort. She was sitting in front of the massage therapist's office where the specialist worked with her son when suddenly she noticed a familiar face. Unexpectedly, given the fact that she had come to the capital for the first time in about 15 years. A man in a white coat at the reception desk. The woman looked more closely. No, it can't be, she thought as she turned to him. The same Jack who had once been in love with her, with whom she blushed to the roots of her hair when he looked at her from afar. Of course the girl noticed the looks he threw at her, he thought surreptitiously. It was nice to feel so loved, so desired, so unique. It seemed to her then that there would be many men like that in her life, especially since she, a pretty high school girl, had enough suitors. But she was wrong. No one had ever felt as strong and sincere feelings for her as he had at that time. All those years later, she was deeply ashamed of the part she had played in the ugly scene of her classmates' humiliation. Then she did it for someone. A charismatic, athletic guy that all the high school kids were crazy about. And he chose her, and that couldn't have been happier. Of course, the girl agreed to take the nerd to the agreed place in the park for his sake. It seemed like a fun adventure at first, almost a mission, especially since a lot of people were involved in the game, and she had such an important role in it. Anne tried to forget the way the guy looked at her when he realized what was going on. But that look haunted her all these years. The puzzle of fate came together in a rather bizarre way. Well, everybody got what they deserved. She's a college dropout, the mother of a disabled child, with no husband, no job, and no hope of making it in life. He's a successful, apparently, doctor, probably some kind of boss. He gets a respectful greeting from the staff. No wonder. Jack had always been the smartest kid in class. Only as she grew older did she realize that this fact probably made some of her classmates jealous, angry. He was being bullied, in part. because of that. I wish he hadn't noticed her, hadn't recognized her. She was still ashamed to look him in the eye. She wanted to get up and run away, but she had to wait for her son. The woman stared into her smartphone with her head down and her hair pulled down on either side of her face. The doctor made his way into the office. For a moment, he was very close to her. It was as if a warm wave had hit her. The man was in the office for about 5 minutes and walked back out. He did not notice her. On the one hand, she was relieved, but on the other, she suddenly wanted, almost to tears, to feel as loved and desired again as she had felt at school, to have him look at her with admiration and tenderness. Surely he had a wife worthy of such a wonderful man. She might have been in her place, had she been wiser and more far-sighted then. And now, who would want her like that, with no job, no education, but with an invalid child in her arms? That's a hell of a present. Brian was led out, aloof and silent as always. She took her son by the hand and led him toward the exit. Now they were going back to the dormitory. The boy needs to rest after the procedure. The boy obediently wandered with her hand down the corridor, not showing the slightest interest in the world around him. And suddenly, on the first floor, the woman noticed a booth with pictures of the center's outstanding employees. There were doctors, teachers, massage therapists, and in the very center was a picture of Jack. The caption below struck Anne to the core. It was the CEO, owner, and creator of the medical center. There was also a photo of Michael, Jack's only high school friend. He was listed as his partner and deputy. What a twist of fate. In the room, Anne tucked Brian into bed, tucked him under a blanket. The boy fell asleep quickly, and his mother settled down on the couch with a glass of soda in her hand. She needed to process what she had seen and decide how to proceed. She was dreading meeting Jack. That it would happen sooner or later, there was no doubt. Rehab lasted 2 weeks, that much time ahead. How to look him in the eye when she met him. What to say? She was now in a dependent position on the man she had treated so meanly in high school. But Anne was sure that Jack would not take revenge on her. He was not the kind of man, not at all like Andrew, who would do anything to please his ego. Still, Anne was very afraid of meeting her former classmate. Of course he would recognize her, would start asking questions about her life. The duty ones. But still it was impossible to interrupt the treatment, and she did not want to stay either. And then it hit. She dialed her mother's phone. Just got a call. Now they said they have to do the paperwork to keep Brian in charge of the charity. There's so much paperwork to collect, and it's all urgent. So I don't know much about this bureaucracy of yours. I don't know much about this bureaucracy of yours. My mother lamented. What can I do? Why don't you come down here and be with Brian? Well, I'll go home. Doubt was evident in Mom's voice. Well, what's the big deal? You're on vacation, so you can visit all your grandchildren. You're on vacation, so you can visit all your grandchildren. She knew her parents missed their eldest daughter and her children. It's okay, I'll think about it. Let's call tonight. Anne exhaled with relief. She knew exactly what her mother's decision would be. Of course, she would come to the capital. Then she would grumble, maybe even reproach, say that the unhelpful daughter could not decide anything without her parents so far. It's all right. She'll get used to it. At least it will be possible to run away from here so as not to accidentally meet a classmate. Ironically, these couple of days waiting for her mother Anne was waiting to meet a former classmate, and she was afraid to talk to him. At the same time, she was drawn to the man. Such a strange set of feelings. Sometimes she glimpsed him from afar. He was always collected, organized, friendly. One day I noticed Michael too. The pimply, funny kid had turned into a handsome man with a strong-willed chin. Also a doctor, Also a necessary, irreplaceable person. They save lives, save children. Real heroes. Finally, the day of departure came. Her mother had arrived the night before and managed to ruin her daughter's mood in less than a day. So she was looking forward to pick up her suitcase and head for the train station. She was immensely grateful to her parents for their help. She would not have survived without them, but these endless reproaches, however fair for the most part, did not add to her joy in life. Finally, she slid into the cab. A little longer, and she would be far away from here. It was a little bit bitter and sad that she never got to talk to Jack. What were these strange, conflicting feelings? She didn't understand herself, but she felt that she had done the right thing. Within a couple of days, Jack had found out everything about the condition of the woman's son and even made an individual plan for his rehabilitation. The boy is complex, and he is an adult. Time, of course, wasted, but the results will be for sure. How the doctor wanted to be present at the moment when the boy would please his mother with his first word, and that, if everything goes as planned, will happen very soon. Poor woman, what had she been like all these years? Like this, at school, it seemed that the whole world was open before her, so beautiful, so kind, just unearthly. Around her were always hovering crowds of admirers, ready to fulfill any wish of the girl. The doctor found out her story. It turned out that she had divorced her husband. It seems that the boy's father is the same Andrew, their mutual classmate. He literally did not give her a pass, constantly hanging around. Or maybe it was just a coincidence. In any case, the husband was the kind of man who would run away from a child's diagnosis. A great way to leave her problems behind and start a new life. She had to fight her son's illness alone. And he, more than anyone, understood how hard it was mentally and physically. He really wanted to hug the woman, to support her. She was strong, of course. If she was trying, of course. If she was pulling it all off, but she could use some help. The doctor was waiting for the treatment to begin to produce results. He wanted to go up to her at this happy moment for her and discuss her son's prospects. And then, who knows? It's hard to guess. He secretly watched the woman every day, just as he had at school. He knew the boy's treatment schedule. Today, for example, he had physical therapy. The doctor passed by the physical therapy room. Sitting on a sofa waiting for their children were parents. 3 young mothers and a middle-aged woman. The face of the latter seemed vaguely familiar to the man. Her classmate was not among those people. The man became alarmed. She never missed a class. Maybe her son was sick. The man entered the hall and immediately saw the boy. He was clearly making progress, looking at the instructor and repeating the exercises after him. Until 5 days ago, the boy was totally oblivious to other people. I could see the progress. I don't understand anything at all. Where is she then? Maybe she'd gone somewhere. Jack waited until the class was over and followed the young patients out into the hallway. Brian was taken by the hand of an older woman. "So, grandson, how was class?" She smiled. It was her mother. That's right. That's why she seemed familiar to him. But where was the mother herself? There was only one way to find out. There was no point in stalling any longer. "Excuse me, where is the boy's mother?" man asked. "I really need to talk to her." "So she's gone," replied the woman. "To the train station. She has business in town. I'm on a substitute. That's how she left." Apparently, the doctor's face reflected a whole range of feelings. Mother became alarmed. "What's the matter? Do you have some papers to sign?" "What time is her train?" "3:30, I think." The man jumped out of his seat and rushed down the stairs. He rushed to the parking lot in his bathrobe, just in time. The train was leaving soon, and he had to get through the city in a hurry. Why had he waited so long? There were plenty of convenient moments to talk to her. It was his own fault. He changed his normal, safe driving habits. He was overtaking, skipping red lights, breaking the speed limit. He was getting angry, honking his horn. Surely now we should be expecting receipts with fines. But none of that mattered. The main thing was to get to the station before the train left. And he did. He ditched the car in the parking lot and dashed onto the platform. Boarding had just begun. So many people. In this crowd, it is very difficult to discern a graceful silhouette. He looked around with all his eyes. The blood rushed to his face. His heart was pounding like mad. She was nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be seen. What to do? And then a crazy idea occurred to the man. He rushed to the dispatcher's booth. "I'll pay any money." Apparently, the man in the white coat looked convincing enough because the station attendant allowed him to the microphone without too many questions. "Please come to platform 5. There is an urgent message for you." The doctor tried to make his voice sound calm and confident. Already running up to platform 5, he spotted her. There was no point in stalling any longer. What to do? And then a crazy idea occurred to the man. He rushed to the dispatcher's booth. "I have an announcement to make." He immediately began to explain. "It's very urgent. The questions are very important. Any money will do." Apparently Jack looked convincing enough because the railway station employee let him in at the microphone without unnecessary question. "Anne Sergeyevna Sokolova, please wait for me on platform 5. Is there an urgent message for you?" Jack tried to make his voice sound calm and confident. Already running up to platform 5, he spotted her. Anne was hurrying across the platform toward him. She looked worried. You bet she was. You just can't get off the train like that. What a beauty she was. Even tired and excited, a little out of breath from the brisk walk. Jack, without further ado, walked up to her and did what he had wanted for so long. He hugged her tightly. Anne seemed to be just waiting for that. She pressed herself against him and seemed to cry. She clearly recognized him. There was no doubt about that. Next to her, he felt strong, brave, all-powerful. He would protect her from all the hardships of life, would be a stone wall for her. With him, the unhappy woman would smile again. Explained, stroking her smooth, shiny hair. "I couldn't this time. I'm sorry," she finally squeezed out. "You've been so good to me and I've been ashamed all these years." "Never mind, Jack replied, wiping the tears from her cheeks directly with his palms. "We were children. Kids make mistakes." Anne clung tighter to Jack. She finally felt needed and loved. How she missed that feeling. It was clear without words that he still loved her. It was unbelievable. It was a miracle. Perhaps an undeserved miracle, but it was. "But don't go," Jack pleaded. "Please stay here with me. I want to be near you. Give me a chance. We'll try. I want to be near you. Give me a chance, we'll try. I don't believe this is really happening. I feel like we've been together all our lives. It's so weird, it's nothing weird. It's just that I love you. Jack finally admitted. These words, which he had hesitated to say for so many years, came surprisingly easily. "I know." The woman smiled. Her eyelashes still glistened with tears. But the woman was already smiling. There was so much tenderness and warmth in her bottomless blue eyes. "Of course I know. You have no idea how lucky I am to have you now. What luck that you made it before the train left." The man thought the distance would not be a hindrance to him now, even if the train had already left. He found her, never to let her go again.